Steve Tesich has written such movies as, of course, Breaking Away, and recently completed the screenplay for Garp, and Eyewitness, and his current motion picture, Four Friends, is quite popular all across the United States. Originally from Yugoslavia, he's here with us tonight, and he spent part of his life, as you probably know, in Indiana. Please now a nice welcome for Steve Tesich. I mentioned, as people now know, that you lived for a time in Indiana, and maybe they don't know that. I knew that because I lived there, I guess, around the same time you were there.
Two Hoosiers.
Yeah, but that was, of course, the setting for Breaking Away.
That was my college years, and I ran into a guy who was doing his Italian fantasy. I was riding a bike. I hear an Italian opera being sung behind me. I turn around, there's this guy climbing a hill singing. Starts talking Italian to me, and being Yugoslavia, knowing how tough it is on foreigners, I really have pity on the guy. For a week, I try to tell him what America is like, what it's like to be in Indiana, and all this. And then I find out he was born in Indianapolis, grew up there, and this whole fantasy thing, it was just a kind of a daydream.
Was this the first movie that you had written?
It was the first movie, it was the first screenplay that I had written, and it took 8 years for people to see fit to make it.
No kidding. So how does one keep from getting miserably discouraged? When you've written something, you've got it neatly typed, I would guess, and it lays around for 8 years.
Well, you really keep writing other things, because if you're going to wait for that one thing to be made, and actually, I was positive nobody was going to make it because everybody had read it. It was like a library book. I would meet people, say, that's a great screenplay. Why don't you write this other thing for us? And you kept wondering, if it's so great, why don't they make it? You know, but somehow nobody could see a film in it.
Is that difficult? Now the Breaking Away was so personal, or so you were so personally involved in it. It was probably easier to write than someone saying to you, I got a great idea.
Yeah, there's
a couple of guys are going to Neptune. You know, if they say, write this idea, is that harder than writing your own idea?
I would not know what a couple of guys going to Neptune talk about on their way up there. Yeah. Now, if they said a couple of guys from East Chicago going to Neptune, I said, okay, I know two guys. You know, there's Joe Kish, I know. I know what he'd say on his way to Neptune. I could do that.
Well, let's get some of this stuff down, Steve. I think. Now, Garp was, of course, not written by you. Was that difficult to adapt somebody else's novel to a screenplay?
I would love to say how hard it was, because, you know, people want to hear that, and then I come off sounding really good. But it was easy. It's a terrible thing to admit. It was just wonderfully easy to write it. I saw how to do it, and I was so excited. I sat down. Next thing I knew, it was finished.
Did you have lengthy discussions with the author of that or the people producing the movie?
I would not call them lengthy.
It's like stealing, isn't it?
Actually, we didn't have a discussion.
They do know you did it, though, huh?
When I finished the screenplay, I sent it to John Irving, but I really couldn't see having a discussion with anybody until I finished writing it. There was nothing to talk about.
Never having done this, this is mystifying to me, but I'll take your word for it. The other thing that I was interested in about East Chicago, Indiana, what is that like? I never actually was in East Chicago, Indiana.
Well, there was a picture that you had of the people that didn't make it on the show, and there was a guy with one of those Pepsi machines. Well, if you took all those pipes and you kind of multiply them a million times, and you put this constantly red sky above it, there you have East Chicago. Except within it, you have wonderful people. And that's really how I remember it.
I can remember, we talked about this earlier, in the late 60s, before they did anything really to curb the pollution. This is a heavy industry town, a lot of steel and iron smelting, or whatever they do with iron, or whatever they do with smelt, for that matter. And the air, like you said, was continually orange. It was beautiful. Twice a day it would be right. It would either be sunset or sunrise, and it would be perfect.
But the nice thing, it was they hadn't invented pollution then, so we didn't know it was polluted. You know, we just, it's nice and red.
And people actually felt that...
well, they really thought, the immigrants, the Serbians, I, of course, joined the Serbian community, and they said, that stuff really makes you tough. This air, you breathe this air, you get really strong. You know, Well, you know, you come to a new country and you assume people know what they're talking about. So breathe deeply.
But hardly ever do you go to your doctor and he says, you're not breathing enough soot. You don't hear that. So anyway, you came from Yugoslavia.
Well,
and
someone
moved to
has
Chicago.
to, you know.
I can't imagine in my present circumstance just picking up and moving to a foreign country. You did it with your family. What was that like?
Well, it was very strange because I formed notions of America in Yugoslavia by watching films, and most of the films were westerns, and so therefore when I landed, I honestly expected maybe, if not John Wayne, a close friend of his to be there on a horse, waiting for me to take me to the guy, and we're going to ride off across these prairies that I didn't seem to see when I landed at Ellis Island.
All right.
And the language, my first contact with English, because I was so eager to pick up new words, was shubum shupum. And I said, well, it's English, and I started looking around and asking around, and it was the first sound I heard. The song was playing on Ellis Island, shubum shupum, and that was somehow a bit of a shock.
It, of course, means don't breathe. We're gonna take a look at a small portion of Four Friends. Is this what we're going to do now? Okay, this is the newest film presently in release that Stephen Tesich has authored. Autobiographical, eh?
Oh, very.
Do you need to tell anything about this?
There's the central hero in this piece is coming home. The girl he loves is getting married, and he thinks he knows to whom.
David? Hello, Dave. Rudy. Thanks for coming. Yes, I've heard about all of you. I hope that you and Tom will be very happy.
I hope so, too. What about David and me?
Yes, of course. It's just that the custom calls for the bride and groom. I think I better shut up. David! She asked me, and...
I'm going to have a baby.
Well, congratulations. It's Tom's baby. I better shut up again. What the hell's going on?
I didn't want to get married.
I did. I love ceremonies. I can't wait to have my baby. Isadora Duncan had babies, and it made her dance that much better. It did. It made her flower.
What about
That's
me?
what I'm going to do. I'm going to flower.
Why didn't you tell me?
You had your chance.
Mostly autobiographical.
Very much so.
Now, which one would have been you in there?
The guy that had his chance and blew it.
Yeah.
Because in the movie, the girl, when she decides it is time for her to more or less give up her virginity, she comes to this guy.
That being you.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was the 60s where you say, my God, I love you. You do not do that with someone you love. And, you know, it takes the character in a film only about 8 years to make up for that.
Now, this was your observation of the 60s.
Perhaps not yours, I take it, by the look you're giving.
Well, I don't know. It's just
You've had other experiences.
I've had very little experience in the 70s, and so far the 80s ain't been good. But I was under the impression that the 60s was the first decade when all of that sort of...
It started changing,
Yeah.
but the film starts in '61, and that's sort of the period that I went through in East Chicago.
Yeah. You're not living in East Chicago now, eh?
No, I have a cabin in Colorado.
Yeah.
So that's where I spend most of the time.
We're pretty excited about Garp.
It is a wonderful film.
Yeah.
I've seen it 8 times, and George Roy Hill, I have, because I kept waiting for it not to be as good as the last time.
Yeah.
And it's just gorgeous film.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephen Tesich. We'll be right back with a tour of NBC.